Everyone, this stream should be live right now. Let's just check that we are coming through. Yes, we have a live stream and
All
we're
right.
we're good. Welcome everyone. I see us just come up. So, hi guys, it's been a while. Good to see you all again. Thanks for being here. Yeah. And AT, good to see you again. Thanks for coming back on
Nice
the
to,
show.
nice to be here. Thanks for having me on. My baby's in the background crying, as I was joking earlier. That sounds like some of our Muslim friends on the comment sections every time we go up against them. So, it's music. It's music to our ears, really.
Yeah. While I'm talking about this, actually, I should just move this over. And I'm just going to share the screen quickly. Uh, I'm just going to put us here while I zoom this in. This is a comment I got literally a few minutes ago from a guy commenting on one of my videos on what is the most common miracle in Islam, which is that of Muhammad's poop. And he said, I said to him, look, are your seerah, your biographies of Muhammad, basically the New Testament of Muhammad, are they false or your scholars lying? And he says, you must respect religion, such as we respect your religion, but if you dare to say about Muhammad's waist, I want to tell you that it is a great miracle in Palestine. So Muhammad's pooping is considered a great miracle in Palestine. We are tormented in order to raise the banner of truth and the knowledge of most poopies. Um, I don't know. Maybe I wouldn't want to make a big deal out of that particular bodily function, but look, when you got nothing, I guess you got to start somewhere. Your thoughts?
Um, yeah. So that in Palestine they celebrate Muhammad's waist. And I want to tell you that it's a great miracle in Palestine. We are tormented in order to raise the banner of truth. What? I, does he speak English? Like
He,
that's like I don't even know. I don't even know what to say to stuff like that. So it, to, I feel like
well,
it's like the what's that movie? Something about Mary. Have you seen that movie? Something about Mary,
no, I haven't.
where
I've seen maybe snippets of it, but no, I
okay,
have
well,
not.
there's like a scene where the there's like the special needs kid and like the other kids are picking on him, and he has a baseball and they tell him, no, this isn't called a baseball, this is called your private part. And so he loses it, so he goes around asking everybody if they have seen his private part because he doesn't understand what the word means. And I feel like our friend over here, DZ, does not understand. Somebody told him the wrong word, I think is what happened.
Nicholas Paulson just said, "Wow, I can also perform miracles by that standard."
Yeah, Nicholas, we're proud of you.
I'm really sorry, but this is way too much. Hey guys, welcome back. Good to see all of you. I hope we didn't start it from the wrong poop. Sorry, foot. Um,
Speaking of wrong foot and poop, aren't you supposed to walk into the bathroom with like the left foot first? Otherwise, the shaitan messes with your bowels when you're in there.
I have no idea.
Uh,
And Erkin, thanks for being here. Thanks for being here and supporting again. Dragon, hello there, and Romeo, everyone. Good to see you guys. Okay, yeah. So let's just get back to where we were. So, guys, tonight the discussion is about to get off that topic. Sorry, I guess I needed to laugh, but uh, the things you are willing to believe. But anyway, tonight's topic is was Jesus born out of a rock wearing a hat? And I know I'm kind of being a little bit sarcastic about that, but it's kind of true, and we are going to get to that point. So At, how about you introduce the topic? Do you want to just say what it's about, and then we'll jump right in?
well, obviously, if you guys have been around the internet for a while, you will have heard a lot of people talk about, Jesus as being a myth. You'll hear people say that, he's based off of the ancient pagan myth of like Dionysus, Horus, Mithras, you name it. People believe that Jesus probably didn't ever actually exist.
Hmm.
There's a lot of infamous, I'm going to call them infamous, new atheists and internet trolls that somehow believe this. But what's funny about them is they'll make fun of religious people who believe things like, "Oh, you believe your God does blah blah blah," and yet they believe that Jesus was not a historical figure when there is a much. I mean, it's where you'll see here towards the end that, I mean, there's no doubt whatsoever that Jesus
Yeah,
existed.
and they're
So
believing literal myths. They're believing literal fantasy. It's
mhm,
crazy. So, guys, yeah,
exactly.
let's get started. Also, this is likely to be more than one episode. We're going to be going over the arguments from the other side. We're going to look at some of the counter evidence, and then the final part of this would be when we start to look at the historicity of Jesus, looking at various sources, both biblical and extra biblical. So we don't expect to finish this all in one day. Okay, anything in the chat, let me know. If you guys want to comment to me, just at Lloyd de Jong, just at my name, and we'll take it from there. Okay, so let's bring this up. So yeah, let's move us over to the side. So Jesus, history versus hysteria. So let us begin. Right. Also, I do have certain comments. Let me just, yeah, I do have various commentary on this. Let me bring this up. Yep, so that I can see some of the commentary. Okay, so tonight we are going to make a serious attempt to not laugh while answering these very serious questions. Is this Jesus? According to some people, yes, it is, or at least a precursor, or at least whatever. And yeah, and who is this character being born from a rock while wearing a hat? So Bertrand Russell, right? Historically, it is quite doubtful whether Christ ever existed at all, and if he did, we know nothing about him. Any comment from you, At?
Well, number one, the thing being born from a rock, was the rock a virgin? Lloyd, I can't remember the rock. Never
Um,
mind. Uh,
Virgin Rock, but I have questions about the hat.
yeah, the hat is very interesting. It was an uncircumcised hat. On the eighth day, they removed the hat. Bad joke.
Sorry, but
Sorry. As a yeah, okay. Yeah, I mean, just certain big names, especially for whatever reason, England has a lot of people who are very intelligent apparently, and they think all of these weird things, but apparently they don't actually read history, understand textual criticism,
yeah,
historical criticism, source criticism, anything
yeah.
of that nature. So we're gonna pretty much
So yeah,
destroy these
guys,
guys in
this
just a
actually
minute.
is a very serious topic, as you all know. I mean, this is very much an assault on the foundations of Western philosophy, Western morals, Western law, because obviously the combined Judeo-Christian history is what founded our sense and view of the world, and this is very much under assault. And you have these intellectuals who seem to, for one reason or another, often seem to be very dishonest. But let's have a look at what some of the other side has to say. So this, as you know, is Richard Dawkins. This is he's a biologist, which obviously makes him a fantastic theologian. Nobody, well, I mean, as you know, theologians make great biologists.
That
So
would be true.
yeah, so nobody knows who the four evangelists were, but they almost certainly never met Jesus personally. Much of what they wrote was in no sense an honest attempt at history, but was simply rehashed from the Old Testament because the gospel makers were devoutly convinced that the life of Jesus must fulfill Old Testament prophecies. It is even possible to mount a serious, though not widely supported, historical case that Jesus never lived at all. What's interesting is that Bart Ehrman would come out directly against this statement. Right, Bart
Mm.
Ehrman himself, and I have video later on. I've got statements by Bart Ehrman as well as actual video, where he states that this is a very, very poor position to hold. And he says this has been done by, among others, Professor G.A. Wells of the University of London in a number of books, including Did Jesus Exist? And this is a statement by Richard Dawkins. Any comments from you, At?
Well, I try to be as charitable as possible when I listen to these people. I really do want to understand the perspective that they come from. And like I said, I want to grant them as many arguments as possible. The thought that Jesus never existed at all, that is absolutely 100% laughable. There is more certainty that Jesus existed in history than more so than almost anyone else.
Yeah.
Um, in terms of what he said there in the second paragraph, that the New Testament authors could have redacted some things to try to fill in some Old Testament prophecies. Okay, that's a point that I think would take a longer time to address. But at least of the whole thing, that
Sorry.
part at least has something that I would consider address worthy. The rest of it's pretty much laughable.
Okay. Right. I haven't done this for a little while, so I need to get my yeah. It's hard to try and get this sorted out again once you haven't done this for a while. Okay, but let's just move forward. Now, of course, we all know the movie Zeitgeist. And it says that the reality is Jesus was the solar deity of the Gnostic Christian sect. Now, I have an issue with the Gnostics being called Christian because they were anti-Christian. They actually disagree vehemently with the Christian concept of the world. Just as Islam claims to be similar in faith to Christianity, it actually is anti-Christian, same as the
Hmm.
Gnostics. So there is very little similarity. They basically are like a parasite that has taken these ideas from Christianity and inverted, warped, and manipulated and altered them, and is literally antithetical to the concepts um, that we believe in Christianity. But it says he was the solar deity of the Gnostic Christian sect, and like all other pagan gods, he was a mythical figure. It was the political establishment that sought to historize the Jesus figure for social control. That's Peter Joseph, real name James Koyman, uh, who created the internet movie Zeitgeist. Thoughts from you?
I need to watch this movie. I know that Inspiring Philosophy has done a whole series of videos kind of refuting the Zeitgeist stuff, how there's parallels between these different pagan deities and whatnot. I think he did a pretty good job at it. They're pretty long videos, anywhere from 7 to 20 minutes long. I guess not too long, but that's something as a resource that you guys can go look at. What we're gonna do today. We're going to get into all of those things as well. We're going to kind of hit them point by point
Yeah.
pretty quickly. So this is more of a concise type of reading with it. But yeah, this whole political establishment's thought to historicize the Jesus figure for social control. That makes absolutely no sense. So.
Well, I think to some degree, Nicholas Paulson says here the Zeitgeist movie has been beaten to death over and over. It's
Mhm.
exactly the dishonest garbage you can expect from Marxists, and this is true. But also, remember back in the day, it was very popular for people to say, for atheists and communists and such, to say, don't impose your morality on me, don't impose your Christian beliefs on me. However, they are very, very willing to impose their Marxist atheist beliefs on you, right?
Yeah.
And which is what they're doing right now, in fact. And don't forget that while God is a God of love, a God of forgiveness, he's also a God of justice. And if
Mhm.
you look through, I believe it's Romans, there's a very strong discussion on the fact that there must be government, there must be law, the law must be implemented, the law must be followed for the sake of justice, and therefore there must be occasional punishment of evil, punishment of law breaking, and that only the unjust would not want government and would not want law. I mean, this is made very clear, and I've actually wanted to do a show on that because I've got this. Your thoughts on that, At?
Well, I think, yeah, I mean, not to go too far down like the political rabbit hole or the atheist rabbit hole, but without God or a lawgiver, then laws and rules and those types of things become a subjective standpoint, right? There is no
Mm-hmm.
actual right and wrong. Really, what it comes down to is the phrase "right makes" or "might makes
Might makes
right."
right. Yeah.
So whatever the majority of people decide arbitrarily to call good and bad, or good and evil, or right and wrong, ends up becoming what is considered right and wrong. But at the end of the day, if there is no actual, unmovable lawgiver who passes judgment and things like
Yeah.
that, then there can
If there's
be
no
no,
objective standard,
yeah,
it's all opinion, and
then
it's
there
all
would
who can enforce it with the most power.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
So let's step forward here. So the question is, was there no actual Jesus of Nazareth that really lived? Right? Are the skeptics right? Do they have a point? And second, is Jesus a copy of other pagan gods? And we want to go into some depth on this topic. All
Hmm.
right. So, there is nothing the Jesus of the Gospels either said or did that cannot be shown to have originated thousands of years before in Egyptian mystery rites and other sacred liturgies. We're going to demonstrate that this statement and the ones you've seen prior are demonstrably false. They're weak, shoddy scholarship. So, where did this myth originate? Where does the Jesus myth originate? So, let's have a look. Bruno Bauer lived 1809 to 1882, was a German theologian, philosopher, and historian who looked at the sources of the New Testament and, very controversially, even for the time, concluded that early Christianity owed more to Greek philosophy, Stoicism, than to Judaism. In 1840, Bauer began a series of controversial works arguing that Jesus was a myth, a second century fusion of Jewish, Greek, and Roman theology. Now, your comments on that, AT.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really important. And Veronica at the well just asked a good question: is what sources can we look at? What are they looking at? How are they drawing these conclusions? Based on what level of historical claim is that happening? And there's not a whole lot to it. We were discussing this before the live stream, guys. Is um, if you're kind of one of those parallel mind people, you see links between everything. Sometimes that's true. Sometimes there are actual real links between this happening and that happening, but other times there's false links, right? So that's how people get sucked into what am I trying to say? Missing words, but basically, so as a baseball player, back in my day, superstition. Sorry, like if I wore a particular pair of underwear and I got 4 hits that day, I'm going to attribute my four
Magical
hits
thinking.
to the underwear that I was wearing, right? And baseball players are kind of infamous for that kind of behavior. But they're drawing links that have nothing to do with the actual outcome of it. So we're going to really break down a lot of the outcome based or
Well,
what they're looking at to see if their conclusions can be reasonable.
somewhat off topic and out of the scope of what we're discussing, but this was also the time when you were looking at the genesis and the rise of the ideas of who was the scientist that we spoke about it earlier? At the oh, good grief, um, the guy who introduced the idea of Darwinism. Sorry, yes, this was at the time, around the time of the rise of the concepts of Darwinism. Darwinism is really an alternative atheist scientific creation myth, right? And I must also note that at the time, being German, this is part of a German school of thought. They were very much anti-Jewish. They were anti-Semites through and through, and they clearly wanted to separate the concept of Jesus from any attachment to Judaism. It's only in the recent times that we actually have where theologists and others, scholars of theology, Christian theology, have rediscovered the and correctly so, the Jewish roots of Jesus, because Jesus and every single one, except one, I think Luke, of the apostles were all Jewish. They came directly out of Jewish history, Jewish culture, Jewish life, and they wanted to separate Jesus from that. And this is still something that many scholars want to do today. They want to deny many quote unquote Christians want to deny any kind of Jewish attachment to Jesus, and they want to separate any kind of Jewish root from the church. So this is really, they were just anti-Semites. They just hated Jews, quite simply. Right, now Bauer's work was picked up by a man called Albert Kalthoff, who followed Bauer's extreme skepticism, and he went so far as to claim that Jesus of Nazareth never existed, and he was not the founder of Christianity. Right. So Edkin says, yeah, from now we discussed the fictional Jesus hypothesis. Now, what's interesting is that this actually has roots, obviously, within the Gnostic beliefs from the 1st and 2nd century, 3rd and 4th century of after Christianity was founded. Now, after Bauer and Kalthoff came others, with the most notable being James Fraser, who wrote a work entitled The Golden Bough, where he argued that Jesus mimicked the supposed widespread worship of dying and rising fertility gods in various places. Now, Jesus was not a fertility god. He was not a copy of a fertility god. Right. He mentioned Tammuz in Mesopotamia, Adonis in Syria, Attis in Asia Minor or Phrygia, and Osiris and Horus and others in Egypt. Then, of course, you have internet movies such as Zeitgeist, reference people such as Gerald Massey, who was a poet and an adherent to Spiritism and Theosophy, again, Gnosticism, and Acharya S., we'll get to her in a moment, for their quote-unquote expert claims on Jesus being mythological. Any comments from you, AT, before I move on?
Right. And another thing that you want to take a look at too, guys. So this is not an ad hominem attack on the individuals who are writing this, but it is to draw a link and try to show you the way that their minds are thinking and what and the perspectives that they're coming from. So a lot of times, and I don't know all these people exactly, but just with the research that I have done looking into a lot of Jesus mythers and stuff like that, particularly around the 1800s, mid 1800s in Europe. Um, a lot of these people were into very, very weird occultic type of spirituality in terms of what they were practicing. So just keep that in mind when we're thinking about this, because we all do have perspectives that we're coming from, and based on those perspectives, we're going to have a certain type of bias that we lean towards. So a lot of the people who are writing these things are coming from this occultic, weird spirituality bias.
Yeah, I think that would be Madame Blavatsky and the School of Theosophy and all of that kind of thing. So yeah,
Hmm.
moving forward. So now let's look at an example of the supposed copycat pagan Jesus claims, right? That Jesus is a copycat pagan god. Let's look at one of the examples put forward, Horus of Egypt, and we'll get into depth with Horus in a minute as well, but let's just present what they say. Egypt, the primeval seat of learning, was the high seat of the sun adoration. The Sphinx, with the face to the east, represents Harmachus, young Horus, or the rising sun. The orb is Osiris, the ruling god of day. In its descent, it is the dying deity going below to the land of shades, but only to be resurrected as the victorious Horus, piercing the head of the dragon of darkness. James Bonwick, Irish Druids and Old Irish Religions. Okay. So the Egyptian sun god Horus, who predated the Christ character by thousands of years, shares the following in common with Jesus. Horus was born of the virgin Isis Mary. This is it's an interesting phrase that we can look at again, but she's never called that. She's just called Isis. No documentation, but we'll get into that. Born on December 25th in a cave or manger, with his birth being announced by a star in the east and attended by three wise men. His earthly father was named Seb, Joseph. Seb is also known as Geb, as Horus the Elder. He was believed to be the son of Geb and Nut. That's Lewis Spence, Ancient Egyptian Myths and Legends, page 84. He was of royal descent. At age 12, he was a child teaching the temple, and at 30, he was baptized, having disappeared for 18 years. Horus was baptized in the river Eridanus or Eritana, the river Jordan, by Anup the Baptizer, or John the Baptist. Anup is really just another way of saying Anubis, the god of the underworld, the dog-faced Egyptian god of the underworld, but okay, whatever, who was decapitated. He had 12 disciples, two of whom were his witnesses and were named Anup and An, the two Johns. He performed miracles, exorcised demons, and raised Osiris from the dead. Horus walked on water. His personal epithet was Iusa, and the ever-becoming son of Ptah, the father. He was thus called Holy Child. He delivered a Sermon on the Mount, and his followers recounted the sayings of Iusa. Let me just move this up to the top left. He was also the way, the truth, and the light, Messiah, God's anointed son, the Son of Man. You've heard all of this in Zeitgeist. He was the fisher and was associated with the fish, ichthys, lamb, and lion. He came before the law. He was called Christ, the anointed one, blah, blah, and blah. Let's have a look at some of this information. So, Horus was born to Isis. There is no mention in the history of Horus that she was called Mary. Mary is an anglicized form of Miriam or Miriam, right? And of course, in the Middle East, she might be called Mariam. Isis was not a virgin. She is the widow of Osiris, who conceived Horus with Osiris. Of course, Osiris was kind of dead at the time. Horus was born during the month of Hoyak, October to November, not December 25th. December 25th celebration of Christ's birth did not occur until the 4th century, and is linked to the winter solstice celebration. The Bible does not assign a birth date to Christ. No record of three kings visiting Horus at birth exists, and also kings did not visit Christ at his birth. Three magi, or in fact, all we know is magi visited. We don't know if there's 3 or 50. Could have been
Hmm.
500 for all we know. We only know that supposedly 3 gifts were left for him. We don't know that each one gave 1, or one guy gave 3, or 12 guys left 3. We don't know. And the Bible never states the number of magi. Magi are advisors to the king. Do you want to state anything here, AT?
Well, so if you want to go back to the previous slide real quick for me, just
This
like I
which
was
one?
saying,
Oh, sorry,
um, the yeah, one just
my
before
bad.
this one. Um,
This one, the copycat claims one, or
no, the one we literally just looked at.
okay, that
So
one,
just
yeah.
that, yeah, the copycat pagan. Yeah, sorry, now I'm on like a 10-second delay. Um, so when you take a look at that slide, guys, you see just a whole list of things that
Correct.
sounds a lot like Jesus. And so if you first hear this without being willing to do the research of it, you might freak out. But the thing of the matter is, and Lloyd's just proven it to us, none of their claims, not a single one of those claims, is factually true, right? So then we have to ask ourselves the question, and I don't think we can actually answer it, is what would motivate someone to literally take Jesus' story, and then it's the stupidest way of doing it. They just like change people's words and make it sound different than what we know it today in English. Literally none of that. Not a single thing on that list that was there is true. Someone just completely made it up.
Yeah, sadly, that is true. So yeah, we'll get into more depth. I just want to cover this, so we'll just run through some of these, and we'll get into more depth as we go. So it should be noted that Horus was not a savior in any shape or form. There are no account or records of Horus being a child teacher at age 12. Horus was not baptized. The only account involving Horus and water is described in one story of Horus being torn to pieces, right? And then Isis, his mother, requests the crocodile god to fish him out of the water that he was placed into. Right? Horus did not have a ministry nor 12 disciples. Horus had 4 semi-gods that were followers and some indications of perhaps 16 human followers and an unknown number of blacksmiths that went into battle with him. Right. So when we start to, so Nicholas Paul's, however, Zeitgeist pretty quickly falls to pieces when he wants to use an, yeah, okay, yes, of course, at least. Right. Now, okay, so there's no account of Horus being betrayed by a friend or transfigured on any mountain. Horus did not die by crucifixion. We'll get into details again later. The Zeitgeist movie pegs Horus' account at 3000 BC, long before crucifixion was even practiced as a punishment. Various
Hmm.
accounts of Horus being dismembered by Set and his body parts being scattered throughout the earth. It should be noted that as we go deeper, and we'll go into more of these things and provide more detail, there are multiple accounts of these legends. The Bible is pretty much a very clear story, whereas these stories, you could find 6, 10, a dozen, 20 different versions of the same stories. That am I correct, AT? Or?
Yeah, no, absolutely. That was another thing I was going to bring up. You're absolutely correct. Almost none of these stories is there a unified direction. They're gonna,
A
there's a
single
lot of
definitive
them.
version.
Yeah, at different times, different time periods, they took on different stuff. So there's actually a track record of these pagan religions absorbing whatever was popular at that day, and then kind of rewriting it and recapitulating it for the
Yep.
pop culture, right? So where people are going to like it a little bit more. It's kind of like how we start to redo movies in Hollywood, right? So this movie may have been done, back in the 50s, 60s, 70s,
Mm-hmm.
and it was cool, but the same storyline is kind of there, but they've modernized it to meet with today's culture, and that's basically what these stories were used for back in the kind of
Yeah.
those pagan times. So, and this information, I want you guys to be thinking about this as we progress forward. So, if anyone's borrowing from anyone, let's think about who it's going to be.
Right. So his brother, I believe, Set. Okay. So he's dismembered by Set, and his body parts are scattered throughout the earth. And others combine the story of Horus and Osiris, the sun god, combine them together, and they have him being torn apart and thrown into a river. Horus did not die a death for others the way Jesus did, and Horus was not buried for 3 days. Right. So let's continue here. Horus was not resurrected. There is no account of Horus coming out of the grave with the body he went in with. Some accounts of Horus or Osiris being brought back to life by Isis and going to be the lord of the underworld.
Hmm.
The left eye of Horus was gouged out, which supposedly explains why the moon, which it represents, is weak compared to the sun. It was also said that during the new moon, Horus had become blinded and was titled Mekentiarerti, he who has no eyes, while when the moon becomes visible again, he's retitled He Who Has Eyes.
Hmm.
Now, possibly, it is always possible that within any given storytelling, with any deity, you will find certain common themes or common or overlaps in certain ideas. However, you will find that there are significant differences, and all of these retellings that we hear always ignore these massive, massive differences and focus on one or two potentially fabricated similarities. Your thoughts,
Hmm.
AT?
Well, and a lot of these stories are based on just how celestial bodies function, how the seasons function. So when you read a lot of these pagan things, you're going to understand that they're talking about the sun, the moon, how it changes with the seasons, how when you bury, this god, he's down in the grave until he gets buried in this in the fall, and he rises up again in the springtime. So this is not so much a religion specifically, for the spirituality aspect of it. It's almost a religion for the practicality aspect of it. It's teaching the people who are following it how to farm crops, how to look at the stars, how to understand the constellations. I mean, it's hardly difficult to understand why there's 12 of a lot of different things, because there's 12 months of the year, 12 constellations, all those types of stuff. So a lot of these pagan myths and legends are built around that. They're explaining why the natural world is
Mm.
how it is, and using different deities and personifying them
Mm.
to tell that story.
Now they're trying to make sense of the world. Yeah, true. Stephen
Correct.
says, have you heard the story of the virgin birth of Horus? Now, how Osiris had no winky, hence the virgin birth. We're going to get to that one. Thanks, Stephen. We're
Hmm.
definitely going to be getting to that. So, Bruce Metzger. It goes without saying that alleged parallels, which are discovered by pursuing such methodology, evaporate when they are confronted with the original texts. In a word, one must beware of what have been called parallels made plausible by selective description. Bruce
Hmm.
Metzger is a very famous academic. Let me actually bring up my notes here. Uh, so, Bruce Manning Metzger, American biblical scholar, Bible translator, and textual critic. He was a longtime professor at Princeton Theological Seminary and the Bible editor who served on the board of the American Bible Society and United Bible Societies. He was a scholar of Greek, New Testament, and New Testament textual criticism, and he wrote prolifically on these subjects. He was one of the most influential New Testament scholars of the 20th century.
Exactly.
Right.
And his
Oh,
his most famous student is who?
uh, don't tell me it's that dude. Come on, no way.
It's Bart Ehrman.
Oh, good grief. Sad, sad, sad. Good
Bart
grief.
went a different theological way, but their textual criticism is very much linked. There's actually a quote
Yeah.
from Bart Ehrman saying, if you were to set him in a locked room and Bruce Metzger in a locked room to say what the Bible actually said, he goes, we would come out with almost exactly the same Bible. So
Yeah, yeah, unfortunately. Oh, by the way, guys, please attack that like button. Beat it until it turns blue, okay? Okay? I want nothing less from you. Make jihad in the like button until it's beaten blue, okay?
yeah,
Nothing less.
beat it as if you fear its disobedience.
Yeah,
Make sure you beat it an odd number of times, otherwise it won't it won't actually like.
yeah. Okay, so Bruce Metzger, Chris says Bruce Metzger's book, Textual Criticism, is the standard for the topic. Right.
Yeah.
Another scholar, I believe an atheist, Trygve N.D. Mettinger, in The Riddle of the Resurrection, which is on the dying and rising gods in the ancient Near East, says he set out to show that there were anywhere from 3 to 5 dying, rising god stories that predated Jesus and that influenced Christianity. After looking at all the accounts critically, he reversed his opinion, concluding there is, as far as I am aware, no prima facie evidence that the death and resurrection of Jesus is a mythological construct, drawing on the myths and rites of the dying and rising gods of the surrounding world. The death and resurrection of Jesus retains its unique character in the history of religions. Right, let's see. Excellent, guys. Yeah. Okay, so now this chapter is called Modern Purveyors of Nonsense. Okay. Now you've got Bill Maher, who um, can be very funny, looks a little tired these days, and really should not be talking about religion, right? And of course, you've got his movie, Religulous, which is
Hmm.
supposed to be a play on ridiculous, and of course, Zeitgeist, right? This is where most people, at least in the modern time, or where many people have gotten their ideas from, right? Now, let's take on Zeitgeist, because this one I think is the most popular in well, in our culture. This one's been the most popularly used. And let's see, let's look at Mithra, right? Mithra, born of a virgin, born on December 25, 12 disciples, performed miracles, dead for 3 days, resurrected. Sunday worship, Persia, 1200 BC. All complete bogus nonsense. We've got Horus, born on December 25th, born of a virgin, star in the east, adored by 3 kings, teacher at 12, baptized, ministry at 30, 12 disciples. Fantastic. Egypt, 3000 BC. Dionysus, born of a virgin, born on December 25th, performed miracles. King of kings, Alpha and Omega, resurrected, Greece, 500 BC. And Krishna. Krishna, of course, another one of these templates for Jesus, born of a virgin, except he was born of a virgin Devaki as the youngest of 8 children.
That's
So,
still, yeah.
yeah,
It
so
mhm.
he,
Yep.
so let's look at a little bit about Krishna's life. As you know, born of a virgin, the 8th of 8 kids. In the prison cells of Mathura, Vasudev and Devaki waited for the birth of their 8th child. Now, unfortunately, you will see multiple versions of even the Krishna myth, okay? You will find different versions of it. This is one. The winds wailed and the rain fell. Inside the prison walls, a terrible foreboding filled the hearts of the expectant parents, virgin parents, waiting for their 8th kid to be born. Although Devaki had no reason to doubt the divine prophecy, her heart trembled with fear. King Kamsa, her brother, had already killed her 7 children with his bare hands. That's Jesus. That's the Jesus story, right? 80.
That's it exactly. So maybe they're confused on what the word virgin means too. So maybe they thought virgin meant someone who didn't have an alive child. Maybe
No, the
that's what
first time she had her 8th child.
Yeah. Yeah, the first time she had an 8th child, but the other ones had apparently been killed by this
So they didn't
person's
count.
king. Yeah. So they don't count because they're not still living, I guess. And again, they just don't know what the word virgin means. They're confusing it.
It's just like that, exactly. So, and as was foretold, at the stroke of midnight, Devaki, bound in chains, Mother Mary, right there, bound in chains. That's chains, manger. They're both words in the alphabet, I think. I was educated in Africa at a school for emotionally disturbed teachers, so hell, I don't know. I'm a little concerned about my education, but and she gave birth to her 8th child, a baby boy. Krishna, there you go, dead ringer for Jesus. You guys got that, right?
That's what we understand at least. Yeah. What does Dawkins say about that as a biologist? Can you be a virgin and have 7 private previous children?
Um, Look, these days biology is very, very flexible.
That's true. That's true.
You can have for instance, is chest hair a social construct?
Yeah, I think it is. I think it is,
Because
and that was
chest hair
born
is a
with
social construct.
awesome
I'm checking
powers.
because at any moment you could be a woman. Just ch- ignore the chest hair. Moving on. Moving on. Okay. So Bill Maher quotes Zeitgeist. Okay, Gospel Age says I'm from India. Krishna is just a folktale pagan myth, right? So Bill Maher quotes Zeitgeist. Now here's the thing: there's an incestuous relationship in many of these things. Bill Maher is quoting Zeitgeist. Zeitgeist quotes Dr. Dorothy M. Murdoch, otherwise known as Acharya S. She quotes sounds that she heard coming out of her butt when she had curry one day and it disturbed her tummy.
When she was performing a miracle in Palestine.
Sorry, when she was performing a miracle of Muhammad.
Uh,
I'm sorry. Just.
it's amazing how Satan works all things together, right? There's a link somehow drawn.
I don't know. I'm sorry. Yeah, man. Anyway, so basically, Acharya S. Dr. Dorothy M. Murdoch. When you look into what she's written and the story that she wrote, it's complete garbage. But so people are just going in circles quoting these things, and this has become, unfortunately, it's become the norm that people really genuinely believe this stuff, right? So she's got this book, The Christ Conspiracy, the greatest story ever sold, and the sons of God, Krishna, Buddha, and Christ unveiled. You've already seen how Krishna and Christ are very, very identical, right? So now she believed Jesus was a mingling of pre-Christian myths, sun deities, and so on. Now she cites She cites Professor A.T. Fear, who wrote a chapter in Attis and related cults. Now, Attis is one of the gods that are referenced within Zeitgeist and other sources. She claims that in the chapter, Sabil and Christ, he claims that Attis was killed and resurrected after 3 days in a celebration that depicts his resurrection out of a tomb. Now, the ceremony that Dr. Fear describes is from a major festival of the cult on page 39 of the book, right? So this is a ceremony from a major festival of this cult, but he points out that this cult had undergone changes which could have been a deliberate attempt to rival Christianity and to ensure the cult's survival in the market. That's on page 44. So she forgets this part. She failed to include this part. And in fact, there are numerous instances where these cults have changed their story in the
Mhm.
post-Christian period, not the pre-Christian. The new
Right,
story, the new narrative is post-Christian. So they
right.
stole from Christianity and included those ideas in themselves. AT?
Well, and the one thing that I was kind of drawing a parallel to, since we're in the parallel mood, is how, okay, so we get the information from Bill Maher, right? So this we're talking Hadith chain of narration here, right? So Bill Maher gets his information from Zeitgeist. Zeitgeist gets their information from Dorothy. Dorothy gets her information from Professor A.T. Fear. And then we go and look and see what A.T. Fear actually said relative to what Bill Maher said. And he said literally the opposite. Is that
Yep.
correct? So
Yes.
that's how the chain of narration works in Islam, everybody. Welcome to Islam.
Oh boy, yeah. Wow, that stuff gets around. So yeah, that's so these changes are post-Christian copies of Christianity. They are not pre-Christian, and this is actually a common theme. And there are other instances of this occurring. Now, Atifia goes on to say, Attis too, with his strong emphasis on resurrection, seems to be a latecomer to the cult. So Attis was a new addition to the cult. He's not an The cult might have been around BC, but Attis is AD, right? So
Mhm.
the stress on the Halaria as celebrating the resurrection of Attis also appears to increase at the beginning of the 4th century AD.
Mm,
Is that pre or post Jesus? The 4th
that
century. I mean,
is very, very post Jesus.
that's
Hmm.
post Jesus. Remember,
Yeah.
I, yeah, I'm a little bad with dates. You know what I'm saying? So okay,
AD, BC, it all gets confusing.
so this
I
Attis
understand.
thing starts in the 4th century. I don't recall being told that in the movie Zeitgeist. The same time as in the Torabolium towards the right of personal redemption. I wonder if they stole that idea from Christianity. While these changes could simply be a mutation of religion of a time, and it is important to remember that here we are discussing a period of centuries, not just years, they do seem to have been provoked by need to respond to the challenge of Christianity. Professor Atifia Attis and Related Cults, pages 41 and 42. So there you go. Gospel Edge has asked, why is the donate super chat button missing? Yeah, guys, appreciate the question. Thank you. I actually removed the YouTube donation buttons because I don't want to rely on YouTube and then one day they yank my channel and then suddenly, or they demonetize me and then suddenly it's like I'm like I was relying on income. As you know, I haven't streamed for a while. My father's been very, very ill, as you know. He's well at the moment. Things are okay. We hope to have some tests run this week. Get another opinion, and we'll see from there. But I hope to start treatment very, very shortly. There's been some delays. There's been ups and downs. It's been a real roller coaster, guys. So I had to focus on that, and hopefully we're getting somewhere this week. But that said, look, there is if you look at, hold on, I'm just going to go here for a second. I'm going to change screens for one moment. If you have a look here at support, there is a link here. If you would be so kind, if you want to make a donation, I do appreciate it. There's a link on the bottom. PayPal is also a little sketchy sometimes, or just expensive. Revolut is they have very low fee. Um, PayPal can be very expensive sometimes. So if you'd like to, please use that. But again, I don't want YouTube to demonetize me and I've become used to it, and then you're suddenly stuck. You but yeah, thank you. So this isn't even oral, it's written. Yeah, that's what you said. This is how oral tradition works. You get opposing stories told by two neighboring communities just in 3 generations. That's crazy, right? So yeah,
Yeah,
so
but
this is what
I
the
was
guy
saying, well, this
says.
is
Sorry?
sorry, I was saying this was written. So like these things are actually written down, and you see how they can get confused in 3 generations. Imagine it being only orally, memorized as opposed to you can literally go look at these things, and somehow it even still gets twisted. So, anyhow.
Yeah, but also obviously the people who wrote this deliberately. When I click on I get error page. Really? Okay, that's okay. I have no idea, Nicholas. Oh, I think it doesn't support your currency. That may be the issue. Um, okay, hold on. I'm going to drop an email address in, but thank you very much. I'm going to drop my PayPal email address in the chat. It's ldong_pl@outlook.com, and thank you very much. I do appreciate it. So guys, yeah, so the people who wrote these books and people who made these movies have literally ignored this. They've literally discarded evidence that goes against their thesis, their narrative. They've chosen to ignore this. And
Mhm.
I mean, that's dishonest. So now, oh, by the way, yeah, I need to, oh, bugger. So Mithras, let's have a look. Okay. So this one is called A Lot of Bull, Born Under Rock with a Hat. Mithra, also known as
Yep.
Mithras. Now, Mithra, as we all know, emerged fully grown as an adult from a rock.
Mhm.
That's Jesus, right?
Yeah, no, yeah, exactly, because Jesus came fully grown. Everybody knows that.
Everyone knows that. And he came out of a rock, right?
Absolutely.
Wearing a hat.
Absolutely. We already talked about the hat thing, but yeah.
Yeah. So as you know, Jesus emerged fully grown from a rock. I mean, that's your clue. You know, okay, that makes me think of Jesus. Let's move on here. Mithra, the rock was next to the bank of a sacred river, right? Manger, river. Man, that could be the same thing. Then he was born with a torch in one hand, a burning torch in one hand, and a dagger in the other hand, right? So he had a burning torch in one hand because he needed to find his way through the underworld because he emerged from the underworld. And he had a
Mhm.
dagger in the other hand because he had to go kill a bull. The parallels with Jesus are astounding. You can see Jesus is a carbon copy of this guy.
Can't believe we didn't see this before.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know how we missed this. This is crazy. Zeitgeist
Yeah.
nailed it. Nailed. Fantastic
Mhm.
stuff. Bill Maher got it. Dead on. 10 out of 10. Okay. So fantastic stuff. So this is unfortunately, so he used the torch to light his way in the underworld, and he needed the dagger to subdue creation. Right now, also there is no date given for his birth, despite all the claims. There is no date given for his birth. Okay, I'm just going to move this to the top right. Thank you very much, Nicholas. And so there is no date given for his birth. Right, he had maybe one, maybe two disciples, is all we know of. And Mithra is known for sacrificing or killing the bull of creation in his
Mhm.
struggle to subdue creation. Look at there are different versions of this, and if you read different ones, you'd wonder if it's even the same story or same person. Uh, so he slits the throat of the bull, and the blood of the bull creates the world. AT, you want to give us some info here?
Well, so Mithra and Mithras, all these types of things there's actually 3 different variations. There's a Vedic variation, like from India. There's a Persian version. Persian, yeah, I meant to do that.
Iranian.
And then there's the Greco-Roman version of the story of Mitra or Mithras, right? So Mithras is the one that typically gets compared. That's the Roman, Greco-Roman version, and honestly, it has literally nothing to do with it. I have done actually an extensive amount of research on the Mithra stuff, which we can get into on a different day because that would take me almost a full hour into it.
Yeah,
And I've actually read the actual sources, how they came to the conclusions and stuff like that. But spoiler alert, it couldn't possibly be anything about Jesus.
yeah. So you've got the original Mithra, which has like an Indo-Iranian flavor, and then you've got the
Mhm.
Roman version of Mithra called Mithras, which is again the version that people are familiar with. And he's a second century figure, and he reached his peak in the fourth century and then disappeared. So now you're
Mhm.
looking again at another post-Christian source, which is
Right,
crazy.
and it's actually and it's a secret religion, as meaning that they don't have any writings, they don't have any actual writings from it. People wouldn't say if they were involved in it or not. So the information that we even have about it is just from rock inscriptions, pottery, that type of stuff. So people, it's a pretty loose conclusion that people can draw about the myth of it anyway.
Yeah, so it's probably vague enough for anyone to make up anything he wants, but also people are lazy. They're not going to take a look. They're actually not going to do a full look. So
Hmm.
let's have a look at Horus. Let's get back to Horus. So he was born somewhere between July 15th and August 28th, which, as you know, is exactly the same as December 25th. If you
Yeah.
stand in your head and live in Australia, I don't know, or you're drunk. I haven't traveled that much. I'm from Africa, so someone has to just enlighten me here, but I could be wrong,
Uh,
right?
yeah.
So that's Horus. Let's have a look. Now, Horus is the offspring of an affair between the earth god and the sky goddess. Okay,
Hmm.
so Joseph
Sounds right.
was the sky earth god, and Mary was the sky goddess.
Mm, there it
R-
is.
Right? Got
Makes
that?
sense. Yeah, no, yeah, that's what it says in Luke chapter 2.
Yeah, exactly. Um, in the secret chapter of Luke. That's the secret one. That's the yeah.
Yeah,
So
that's
his
the
father is Osiris.
ZSE,
Yeah, yeah.
Zeitgeist
In the
Standard Version,
Zachariah version of the
or the
Bible.
Zachariah version. I was thinking that we could do both, the Zachariah or the Zeitgeist Standard Version.
Yeah.
Those would be the two parallels that I would use.
So his father was Osiris. His mother is Isis. Now Osiris's body was ripped into 14 pieces.
Mhm.
Then his
One for each of the 12 disciples, right?
the 14 disciples, correct. Correct. They were okay, and then his mother magically so basically the crocodile god has to go down to the river to find his missing piece, which is the scientific term is winky,
Yes.
right? So the crocodile god has to go and grab his can I say that word again or should I just refrain from that?
Winky, giblet.
The
Yeah.
winky, and she reattaches the winky to the body, and then she reanimates the winky, and then she
Mhm.
copulates with the winky to give birth to Horus, right? So that's the birth of Horus, which I think is 123.7% equal to that of Jesus, correct?
The exact same thing, yeah, and she was obviously a virgin as she was being fertilized by the now, so was Osiris was Osiris dead? Just he just had his body, but one
He's
alive
as far as I know, he was
member?
ripped into 14 pieces, and
Huh.
they had to go and they found 13, and then the crocodile god had to go down into the underworld, into the river, to go find the 14th piece, to stitch it back on.
Okay.
And she was in the shape of a bird when she did it. We're gonna get to that point. So this
Oh, yeah,
she was in the
okay,
shape
yeah.
of a bird while she was
Well, that's basically the Holy Spirit, right? It was a bird, it's a dove, it's all the same thing,
yeah, exactly,
100%.
exactly. So
Yeah.
so now here's the thing: the story with Horus is the star in the east is unsourced. There is no such source. Virgin birth, yeah, exactly. Okay, Jesus was adored by an unknown number of magi. Okay, counselors to a king. We can look at them as that way, right? So yeah, there's no adoration at his birth, right? Now, whatever. So there were three gifts. Okay, this is not. I mentioned that earlier, so I was going to talk about it here, but I discussed it earlier. No source anywhere says that Horus was a teacher at 12. There is no source. Now, it should be noted that they're trying to draw parallels between these myths and the Jesus story. But
Mhm.
Jesus, if we read the story correctly, he was not a teacher at age 12. Jesus was in the temple, but he asked wise questions. He was asking questions of the rabbis in the temple, and they said that he was wise for his age because of the questions he was asking. Am I correct, AT?
Yeah, no, that's true.
So he was not a teacher at that time. He was asking wise questions, showing wisdom beyond his years.
Mhm.
Now,
Yep.
notice there was no baptism of Horus. They just fished him out of a river. At least they fished his father's winky out of a river, right? So and Anup, right, the guy Anup is Anubis, the dog-faced god of the underworld, who was
Mhm.
also responsible for embalming. So the closest he came to anything that vaguely resembles baptism was embalming. And since he was an Egyptian god, we can expect that embalming is a standard practice in Egypt, and no one has ever, until now, confused embalming with baptism. Or am I wrong?
Yeah, not until Zeitgeist or Dorothy or whoever wrote this the first time. Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't. You're right.
So there you go. So let's have a look. So Horus had four followers of Horus, and he had 16 blacksmiths or whatever. I mean, so let's have a look at some stories. Some stories here about Horus. So After having sexual intercourse in the form of a bird with a dead god she restored to life, she gave birth dead. She had sex with a dead man.
Mm-hmm.
Joseph was
Yeah.
dead at the time that Jesus was born, right?
That's how it all goes. That's the
I don't know.
standard biblical story.
I mean, can you guys see just how dishonest these narratives are? And they're leaving out critical parts, which it's just crazy. So she has sexual intercourse in the form of a bird. With the dead god she restored to life, she gives birth to a posthumous son, Horus. Now, the only part she animated of him was his, as we said before. So through her magic, Isis revives the sexual member of Osiris. Oh, sorry, that was quote by Dr. Dunand. Okay, so Professor Dunand in the book Gods and Men in Egypt, published 2004, page 39. Then we have Richard Wilkinson, Complete Gods and Goddesses of Ancient Egypt, 2003, page 146. Through her magic, Isis revives the sexual member of Osiris and became pregnant by him, eventually giving birth to their child Horus. This is an Egyptian frieze or Egyptian, I don't know, inscription, depiction
Mm-hmm.
of Isis hovering over. I don't have to explain that to you, right? The birds and the bees. And
Yeah, that's where it came from.
he's dead, right? He's dead. This is alive, and she's in the shape of a bird having a way with a dead man. Does this remind you of the story of Jesus?
Mm.
It's close, right?
Eerily close. But yeah, no, I mean, Romeo's like it's necrophilia. No, absolutely.
It's
This is
necrophilia, exactly. Right? So
it's
Luke 2:52, and the child grew in wisdom and knowledge. Yes. And Nicholas Paulson says, yep, that's exactly. I remember the Gospel of Luke right after the part about the Augustus census, the crocodile, the bird, the river, and this will be so, guys, I mean, you have to laugh at this stuff. It's ridiculous, and people think it's real. It's crazy. This is
mm-hmm.
nuts. Understand? This is nuts. I mean, it's necrophilia. So let's look at Dionysus. Dionysus was born of an affair. Okay, so good old zeitgeist. Let's see, not even close, Stephen. Exactly. So Dionysus is born of an affair between Zeus and a human princess, Semele, or in other versions, incest between Zeus and his daughter Persephone, who was the goddess of death. She was the goddess of the underworld. And of course, Semele, in that version of the story, she wants to know that she finds out from Zeus's wife that it's actually Zeus because he was disguised. And of course, she wants to see him in his true godly form, so he shows her and she dies because no one can see a god and live, right? And then the baby is found alive, and he takes the baby, cuts a hole in his thigh, puts the baby into his
Mm-hmm.
thigh, and the
Mm-hmm.
baby stays there for several months until the baby is born out of his thigh. That's the Jesus story, right? The parallels are amazing.
Yeah, I
Thinking,
mean, because everybody knows that God the Father has a thigh, and that he's not a spaceless, timeless, immaterial mind or anything like that. He actually has a physical thigh. Speaking of physical thighs, and we're going to draw a link to Islam here. I think we should do a video called, I don't know, Zeitgeist 2, where we do the exact same thing and link it all to Islam, except for it'll probably be a stronger case. Um, is a couple of things about a thigh. One, if you know about the shaitan, right? The shaitan has two parts, a male part and a female part on his thighs. So those two things rub together. And then number two is doesn't Allah's shin come in at some point
yes,
that
the shin
on
of
the
Allah,
day of
exactly.
resurrection? So
And
yeah, this is basically parallel to Islam.
so Veronica at the Well says, in truth, the New Testament is a copy of Star Wars. She hopes we'll find that, come to that conclusion eventually. You beat
Yeah.
us to it. So yeah, someone's going to make that movie soon, not to worry. It should
Right.
also be
Well, I mean,
noted,
but that's the thing, right? Like that's what she's saying is a lot of the like a lot of these myths and parallels and stuff. So obviously Star Wars can draw from, and a lot of movies draw from the story of the Bible, of the New Testament, of the dying and right. Like they're drawing from the historical event. It's not as if yeah, anyway.
yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah,
exactly. I
I
mean,
understand. Yeah.
they plagiarizing Christianity,
Hmm.
right? Like
Yeah, and
Gnostic,
everybody knows
like
where it came from. Nobody's confused.
Christian
Nobody
Gnosticism plagiarizes Christianity. Christianity doesn't plagiarize. That paganism came after, not prior, not before.
correct.
It should also be noted that Zeus raped Persephone's mother while he was disguised in the shape of a snake.
Mm, mm.
So why would Peter Joseph from Zeitgeist or Bill Maher leave out these important facts, which might
Because they don't. It doesn't tell their story. It obviously makes it very
yeah,
clear that they are pulling things out of their,
yeah,
yeah.
exactly. So, and there's no reference to Dionysus's birth date, and in many of the versions of the story, he was also born with horns, right?
Hmm.
So, yeah, deities. Now, look, we should note that deities are expected to perform miracles. I mean, like, duh, you're a god, you should be able to do a few things, right? So now, of course, the miracle that of Dionysus is that he was the god of wine and orgies,
Mm.
but he never turned water into wine.
Mm.
So Nicholas says Jesus is the ultimate hero, and so it's quite natural for popular culture to borrow plots, of course. And Romeo
Yep.
says cherry picking. Yeah, it's extreme cherry picking. And let's go on. So he was not a king amongst gods, and Stephen says this is what we thank God for inspired God-breathed scripture. Yes, he was not a king among gods. He did not turn water into wine. And of course, he was in the shape of a bull, hiding from his enemies, and he was ripped apart by the Titans who found him because he was the way his enemies, and they tricked him with toys, and he was looking into a mirror at the time. So they tricked him with toys and a mirror, then they ripped him apart, and that's how he died.
Hey, see the toy, little buddy? See the toy? Now look in the mirror. Oh. It's like I'm imagining how does this work? Like you got like your little chew toy, squeak, squeak, squeak.
Sorry, man,
I don't know.
it is stupid. It's just so stupid. It's like, wow, this is dumb. This is dumb. And
It's
they
at
made a
least
movie
entertaining.
about this.
Uh-huh.
You're like, yeah, so he was tricked with toys and a mirror, okay, and he was in the shape of a bull. And I think that's whatever. I mean, how this is similar to the Jesus myth, I have no idea. And of course, the first Dionysus, now there were two of them. The first Dionysus was boiled and then eaten by the Titans, or he was
Mm.
eaten raw. Okay,
Mhm.
so
Mhm.
Veronica says these birth stories of pagan gods for sure are creative. We must give them that. Yeah, they're crazy, stupid, creative. Yeah, and of course, then Zeus, what Zeus does to protect him, Zeus swallows his heart. And then his heart is turned into a potion. It's powdered and turned into a potion. That potion is put inside Semele or new mother so that he has a second birth. And then, of
There it
course,
is.
he's not born 3 days later. And there are at least 6 different versions of this story that just go all over the place.
There
Any
it
last
is.
word from you before I?
Well, yeah, but that's just where people get it, man. They find like these very, very vague parallels, right? Second birth. Don't ask any more questions beyond that, right? How did he get born the first time? How was he born the second time? We don't care. It's a second birth. Jesus says you have to be reborn and enter in order to enter the kingdom of heaven. He was resurrected 3 days later. We don't even. And here's the other thing too. Do they not take into consideration the Old Testament, the Testament prophecies and how they prophesy? That like the sign of Jonah and who Jesus is going to be in Isaiah 53.
Mm-hmm.
All these Old Testament prophecies that are being fulfilled in Christ, like it's they're like, oh, they're Romanized. No, they're not Romanized. Read the Old Testament. It's not that hard. Read it. That's where the parallel lies within.
Yeah.
Jesus is fulfilling Old Testament prophecies. It's pretty
Yeah.
simple. He's not
And
over
in,
here taking all these pagan deities and blah 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 blah.
and in,
Unless you want to try to make the argument that the Old Testament is a collaboration of all these pagan things, and then that Christianity came
yeah.
out of that. But
And of
that's a
course, in
whole.
many cases, the Old Testament comes prior to these sects and religions.
Yep. Yep.
So
Absolutely.
this is just overlooked, and that's a very strong point you make, a very good point you've made. So yeah, to
Right.
slowly start wrapping this one up, we'll end this and continue next week. So
Mhm.
Semele, daughter of Cadmos, was joined with Zeus in love and bare him. So in other words, they you know they yeah, involving Winkies, and bare him a splendid son, joyous Dionysus, a mortal woman, an immortal son, and now they both are gods. That's from
Mhm.
Hesiod, 940 blah blah, 600 to 700 BC.
Mhm.
Right. So this story comes post Old Testament, of course, but it talks about the two of them were getting it on, right? So there's no virgin birth here. So I don't know how you had a virgin birth. Now let's have a look. There is a virgin birth narrative related to Dionysus. Let's have a look. Dionysus was deceived by the Titans and expelled from the throne of Jupiter and torn in pieces by them, and his remains being afterwards put together again, he returned as it were once more to life and ascended to heaven. This account is written 200, well, in the year, roughly the year 248. So basically 218 years after the death of Jesus, approximately.
Mhm.
And this account was written by a church father, Origen, in the book Contra Celsus,
Yep.
in book 4. And this was as a response to a man called Celsus, who was basically writing incredibly toxic polemics against Christianity, making various claims, and he was simply stating this is what Celsus says. So yeah, no religion has risen out of thin air. Yeah. So this is now taken directly. So against Celsus, or Katakelsu, Latin contra Celsum, preserved entirely in Greek, is a major apologetics work by the church father Origen of Alexandria, written around 248 AD, countering the writings of Celsus, a pagan philosopher and controversialist, who had written a scathing attack on Christianity in his treatise, The True Word. So
Hmm.
yeah, Scientology. So I don't know, should we pause here at this point and continue next week?
How many more before the Bart Ehrman clip?
Uh, so I've got about 3 slides. I can do like 3 slides. We
Yeah,
can just
let's
finish
try
this.
to let's try to. You know, everybody's still kind of hanging out. We've lost a few people, but they'll
Okay.
come back and watch us.
Yeah. So now this low jester, Celsus, emitting no species of mockery and ridicule, we just drop this down to the bottom, which can be employed against us, mentions in his treatise the Dioscuri and Hercules and Aesculapius and Dionysus, who are believed to be by the Greeks to have become gods after being men, and says
Hmm.
that we cannot bear to call such being gods because they were at first men, and yet they manifested many noble qualities which were displayed for the benefit of mankind. So he's saying that these gods displayed these qualities for the benefit of mankind. In no case did they
Hmm.
die for mankind. In no case did they do any miracles on behalf of mankind. So I mean, I've shown you some of what these people are, and they've done nothing that is actually similar to Jesus. That he's making the claim, he's making the assertion. While we assert that Jesus was seen after his death by his own followers, and he brings us again an additional charge, as if we said that he was seen indeed, but was only a shadow. This again is a Gnostic claim, very much like the Islamic claim,
Hmm.
right? This would be like an Aryan claim, where Jesus was just a shadow, was not of flesh and blood, but was just spirit. These
Right,
are very
and
much
and
Gnostic
the
claims. Yeah.
whole thing here too is they're all ignoring the Old Testament. They're all
Yep.
ignoring prophecy. Like none of these Greek pagan deities or whoever it is, none of them have pre-existing scripture that prophesies anything about them. So they're clearly and emphatically fictitious characters created just as stories, whereas
Yeah.
Christ was a real man, a real person, came to earth as the Logos, fulfilled prophecy that was around for 1500 years prior to him. So I want us to keep in mind when we read some of these things. So that's just kind of all I wanted to say on that.
Right. So, among the charges, Celsus had denounced many Christian doctrines as irrational. I know many who do the same today. They criticize Christians themselves as uneducated, deluded, unpatriotic, close-minded towards reason, and too accepting of sinners. He had accused Jesus of performing his miracles using black magic rather than actual divine powers, and of plagiarizing his teachings from Plato, that Jesus had plagiarized Plato. Celsus warned that Christianity itself was drawing people away from traditional religion and claimed that its growth would lead to a collapse of traditional conservative values.
Yeah. And so what this tells us, so when we're reading this, it's obviously a polemic against Christianity, but if you're understanding what it is that Celsus is saying, he is an enemy to Christianity. He does not like Christians at all. So what he's actually affirming is that Jesus did do miracles. He's saying, yes, Jesus did miracles. Everybody knows that, but he did the miracles not by the power of God, but he did the miracles through the power of black magic. So this is third party affirmation that there were miracles attributed
Mm-hmm.
to Jesus. Obviously, he couldn't have done these miracles if he didn't exist.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if there's too much more in there that I can mention on, but just when we read these things, we try not to focus just on how offensive it sounds, but also focus on if I'm a historian and I'm reading this, I'm going, oh, well, Jesus actually existed. This person believed he existed. This person believed that he did miracles and such. So there you
Yeah.
go.
It should be noted that no scholar of the genre, you know, the disputes the fact that Jesus is supposed to have performed miracles. The dispute
Hmm.
is over how he did so.
Right.
So,
Exactly.
just like here, he claims black magic, right?
Hmm.
But so that is a common theme. Now we've got Dr. J.Z. Smith, Dying and Rising Gods, Encyclopedia of Religion, Volume 3, page 521. The category of dying and rising gods, once a major topic of scholarly investigation, must now be understood to have been largely a misnomer based on imaginative reconstructions and exceedingly late or highly ambiguous texts. In other words, post-Christian, very vague, completely contradictory sometimes texts, and there is
Yep.
no unambiguous instance in the history of religions of a dying and rising deity, right?
Bingo.
So you can't pause there, and I'll because we'll end off very shortly.
Yeah. Actually, just back one more slide. Sorry, I was having a second thought.
Hmm.
So one of the other things that he was saying in there, what was it? Sorry, let me read this again real quick. Oh, so Celsus is saying that Christianity itself is drawing people away from traditional religions, right? Traditional Greco-Roman religions. What were those Greco-Roman religions? They're paganism. So if we got people in the 20th, 19th, 20th, 21st century trying to say that Christianity is a copycat of pagan religion, that's ridiculous because some of
Okay.
our earliest sources are saying that this is antithetical to pagan religions, that Christianity is the opposite of pagan religion. So I think that's a really important point that we need to keep in mind as well.
That's a very strong point. I missed that. Yeah, he's stating that it's taken them away from paganism. So how can
Hmm.
Christianity itself be paganism?
Yep.
And of course, paganism was conservative. So in other words, people today are trying to move back to paganism.
Hmm.
I mean, you're saying so. Yeah, moving on. So a final word from Bart Ehrman, everyone's favorite scholar of the Bible. He says, this unusually vociferous group of naysayers maintains that Jesus is a myth invented for nefarious or altruistic purposes by the early Christians who modeled their savior along the lines of pagan divine men who, it is alleged, were also born of a virgin on December 25th, who also did miracles, who also died as an atonement for sin, and were then raised from the dead. Well, we know that this is not true. These claims are false, right? We've just looked at some of them. But the claim that Jesus was simply made up falters on every ground. The alleged parallels between Jesus and the pagan savior gods in most instances reside in the modern imagination. We've just seen a different biblical scholar say the very same thing. We do
Hmm.
not have accounts of others who were born to virgin mothers, who died as an atonement for sin, and then were raised from the dead, despite what the sensationalists claim ad nauseum in their propagandized versions. This is in an article called Did Jesus Exist? Written in the Huffington Post.
Right. So, and Bart Ehrman knows his audience. He's not stupid. So, the Huffington Post would love nothing more than for him to say Jesus was a myth. I can almost guarantee you that.
Mm-hmm.
But Bart Ehrman says to the Huffington Post the truth, right? So, I think it's cool to see when people act counter to what you want them to. That seems to me that they're being more truthful, and we can trust them a little bit more with what they
Yeah.
have to say.
So yeah, I should have the link. I mean, but let's just have a Google. I've got the link. The link is not bringing up the browser, but that's fine. But have a look. Did Jesus exist? Huffington Post, Bart Ehrman. You'll find it. And this is verbatim from that article. So there is no scholar in any college or university in the Western world who teaches classics, ancient history, New Testament, early Christianity, any related field who doubts that Jesus existed. That is Professor of Religious Studies Bart Ehrman, Freedom from Religion Foundation Lecture 2014. It's on YouTube. Here's the link. I'm going to play this for you, then we'll end off. Okay? Right. 18, we can end here with this video.
Yeah, that's perfect. And another thing to pay attention to, he is speaking this as an atheist or agnostic to other atheists. So he has no motivation to lie about it. This is someone who's just being honest.
Right. So let's play this. I'm going to turn
There is a lot of evidence. I mean, there is so much evidence that it is not. I mean, I know
Uh,
in
yeah,
the
it's not
crowd
playing. I can see his mouth moving, but I
not,
can't make out
I
the
mean,
words.
I know in the crowds you all run
Prophet
around with,
Herman.
it's commonly thought that Jesus did
That's
not
pretty
exist.
funny.
Let me tell you, once you get outside of your conclave, there's nobody who,
Still not playing there,
this
buddy.
is
I don't know
not
if you
even
can
an
hear me.
issue for scholars of antiquity.
It's playing, but I just can't hear any words. Oh, you know what? Maybe, you know what? I have it muted. Never mind. Sorry. Go ahead and keep going. Okay, they can hear. I have it
Sorry,
muted
man.
on
I've
my
cut
end.
off
That's
my audio,
fine.
guys. So no, I've cut off my audio. That's why you can't hear me, At. Sorry, I'm
It
going to
is
play this
not
again from the beginning.
evidence.
Okay.
I mean, there is so much evidence that it is not. I mean, I know in the crowds you all run around with, it's commonly thought that Jesus did not exist. Let me tell you, once you get outside of your conclave, there's nobody who. I mean, this is not even an issue for scholars of antiquity. It is not an issue for scholars. There is no scholar in any college or university in the Western world who teaches classics, ancient history, New Testament, early Christianity, any related field who doubts that Jesus existed.
Post the video link in the chat. Okay, yeah, I should do that. So hold on, let me actually just go to the slides here. I'll just grab that link. Okay, wait, let me close this. I will post this in the chat. So guys, I will end this here. Let me just, AT, that's you and me. I'll go back to the main. I will post this link for you guys in just one moment.
So I was responding to Stephen Gilchrist. He was saying that he thinks Bart Ehrman's going to come back to Christ one day, and I hope you're right, buddy. I really hope he does come back to Christ. He's an honest guy. He's an honest guy. He does really good work in terms of textual criticism and stuff like that. From what I understand of him, his reason for leaving, becoming agnostic is because the problem of evil. He has a hard time comprehending that. He's a really great textual critic. He has a terrible philosophical and theological mind. So hopefully he can come back to Christ. Apparently I have an echo too, by the way.
Echo should be fixed. I had the audio out going, which for Bart, and I just switched it off now.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So anyway, I'll quit droning on. But yes, I do too. Also hope that Ehrman comes back to Christ one day.
It's amazing for someone who knows so much. He finds every reason to deny what is obvious to him.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of people think he left Christianity because of his textual criticism, because he is so harsh to say, no two texts are exactly the same.
I think he
But
made
he
a little
says,
bit of
no, that's
money
actually
for
not
being
why.
controversial. I think he got paid too well to be controversial. Because, I mean, the stuff
Yeah.
he says in his public books is very different to what he writes in his academic works. In his academic works, he's unambiguous. The story is rock solid. But in his public works, it's like, well, it's a little, I don't know. He's playing both sides. Yeah, I don't know who knows what the story is. But guys, that's it. Bart Ehrman says, look, the story is rock solid. Right? And he says, look, everyone agrees. So guys, that's it from me. I should wrap up here. Went a little bit longer than anticipated, but I hope that was useful and interesting. And Zeitgeist left out a lot of info, as have all these other sources. And yeah, he just wants to sell his books, and I think that's true. So guys, I hope that was helpful. Do you want to address the narrative criticism in a future episode? What exactly does that mean?
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure what the narrative. Maybe if he gives us an explanation, I'll understand what he's saying. Our future episode is, so this one we were just kind of going through the general overview of the mythicists' perspective, and then in the next episode or two, we're going to start to really focus and cover the actual historical evidence for the bodily life and teaching of Christ, his resurrection. All that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so that's the plan for the next one. So guys, we'll probably do 2 or 3 shows on this, but we're going to be talking about the extra biblical sources from the time that someone mentioned Tacitus and others. So we'll be talking through all those sources and looking also at the criticism of the actual New Testament and so on, looking at what they have to say. So yeah, that's it from me, guys, and I hope you found it very, very interesting. Like I said, please make jihad on the like button to beat it until it's blue. Okay.
I guess it has to be blue, yeah.
That would be appreciated, okay? I mean, there's a reason that, so if it's not blue, you're not doing it right, okay, guys? Um, and yeah, any last words from you, AT, before I sign off?
No, that's it. Erkin, if you could, that he gave an answer criticism of the narrative of Christian Bible and surrounding sources and Acts. Um, do you have Lloyd's email, Erkin? If you do, just send him an email, and then he can forward me your email or something. I want to make sure I understand what you're saying, because it would be cool to do a video on that. But anyway, yeah, the only thing I have to say is thank you everybody for watching. Lloyd, thanks for having me on the channel. Hopefully this was beneficial to everyone, and yeah, God bless everybody.
Yeah, guys, yes, just don't believe everything you read, right? Like, seriously, like, I got pulled over by a cop the other day. He said I was going too fast. I denied it. He said, "Didn't you see the sign back there? It said 60. You were doing 120." I said, "I don't believe everything I read."
That
So
didn't work out so well. So yeah, there
it
you
could be
go.
context. I don't know. I could have been wrong. Could have been the wrong context. But
Those poor African school systems, man. I believe they failed you.
oh boy, man, I'm gonna have to struggle. Oké, ja, tot ziens allemaal. Elkaar verzetten. Ja, baie dankie, is baie welkom. En tot volgende keer allemaal. En goedenavond, geniet die week. En yeah, everyone, take care. 60 versus. Well, yeah, I had a house on the median strip of a highway. I had to be doing 120 just to leave my driveway, dude. So, okay, guys. So anyway, enough bad jokes. It's given old joke a home week, right? So and cheers, dudes. Bye bye.